Max, welcome to the Leanpub launch video for Fixing Software Delivery, an engineering leader's field guide. I was wondering if you could take a moment to talk to all of us a little bit about yourself and what you do and what your book is about and who it's for.
Sure. I'm a seasoned software engineer, approximately 30 years of experience. And I've noticed over and over and over there's this disconnect between the the I don't want to say the factory floor, but you know what I mean, like the line developer and leadership. And it becomes very, very hard to start to characterize the problems that face leaders, or that I'm sorry, that face the engineering teams, and that slow down the process of delivering software in terms that make sense to leadership. And so that's what drove me to work on this book, me and my writing partner, Luniel.
Yeah. No, it's evident the sort of the practicalities of kind of communication and how like the people understand their own problems and other people's problems and how they communicate to each other is a big part of what the book is getting at. One thing I really like that comes sort of very near the beginning is when you have a section about what quality means, and you say that to understand quality problems, you look for recurring sources of delay and risk, like part of the code devs don't want to touch. And that I just find it's so practical and hands-on, but like as a kind of like management at the management level, not on the kind of factor line worker level. How do you find out what parts of the code the developers don't want to touch?
There's going to be have to there's going to have to be some kind of communication pipeline for that, right? There's not going to be a tool you can use. Maybe AI will get to the point where it can start to ascertain that stuff. But eventually you're going to have to come up with some sort of signal where some human is telling some other human, I don't want to touch this. And that's going to surface through some kind of probably some more aggregate signal, like there's this business feature or this architectural component that is a source of pain for developers. Their estimates are always way out of whack, but then things always take way longer than the estimate. So it's like maybe their estimates weren't way out of whack. It's going to have to come down to conversations.
I would just kind of drawing on my own experience, one very practical way of knowing what part of the codes that developers don't want to touch is when you keep proposing a set of things to work on, and one of them is always on the bottom and doesn't really get addressed.
Mhm.
Scary. It could be scary stuff, like the things they don't want to touch, or might be the things that it's just where it's just the most consequences. Like if you're an online e-commerce platform, buying stuff is the scariest part of the code because that's where the money's actually changing hands and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I can say like sometimes internally in Leanpub we're like, ooh, that's a scary part of the code. Let's maybe leave that one for later or something like that. So it's not just kind of difficult or boring, but it can also be just kind of it's the most important part or the
Yeah,
most
there's high
most
risk.
high risk. Yeah.
Yeah. High risk. It's not just like you said, it's not just that it's hard, it's that it's hard and there's a high risk to changing it. Exactly. And when you're running Leanpub, you can kind of have those conversations. But if there were like four layers of management
Yeah.
between you and the people who know that, it's going to have to come back to someone in between you and them noticing that over and over, someone grumbles, "Oh God, we're going to have to touch this thing again," right? And then tripling his estimate as soon as he says that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit later on, just still near the beginning of the book, you talk about the new angle, and it's interesting. You have got amongst the sort of points you make, and the book, by the way, like fixing software delivery, is for people at all levels of an organization, so you can all understand the challenges you're all facing and approaches you can take together to do it. And one line that really appealed to me was where you talk about to thrive in this industry. Um, you need to favor reason and judgment over metrics for short-term tuning decisions. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about that because I know for a lot of people kind of just maybe read the blogs and haven't been responsible for actual outcomes. Often they fall back, at least in my what I've perceived on show me the data, the data. That means you're being serious
Right.
and no nonsense.
we've probably talked about this a number of times, right? So it's like, to my mind, this all goes back to the Enlightenment, but we can't go back that far in this conversation.
Yeah.
We have abandoned reason in favor of empiricism, and there may have been some good reasons for that. Although, note again, we had reasons for abandoning reason, not numbers for abandoning reason.
Right.
We are too addicted to numbers as a society, and that shows up most prominently in the business leadership community, which has this mentality that everything has to be managed by numbers, by spreadsheets, by whatever. And to an extent, there's like an element of truth to that. When you're managing your macro goals, like I want to reduce support costs by 50%. I mean, that is numbers, right? Money, cost, percentage, those are all numbers and they make sense. It makes sense to track them over months or quarters. But you can't translate that into something like software quality. It's right there in the name. It's not software quantity, it's
Right.
software quality. And so we have to switch over to a more qualitative mode of analysis for making decisions in our day to day and our week to week, for making strategic decisions that we expect to accumulate into something that we can ultimately measure with numbers.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, and a little bit later on, just to sort of carry on the conversation, about three quarters of the way book through the book, you're talking about various different approaches, and you get to RMF, or requirements maturation flow.
Hmm.
So people may have heard of, TDD and DDD and stuff like that, but your and Luniel's invention of requirements maturation flow, I think, might be a little bit less familiar to people. So I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit about that and what it means specifically to provide teams with the time and space to do readiness work.
Sure. So RMF, which we talk about in Ready, one of our other books on Leanpub, is about managing the flow of work, especially regulating the handoff from the people more on the idea side, like product, to the people on the implementation side, like engineers and testers and stuff. Um, Giving them the time and space to do preparatory work is about kind of clawing back all of the good stuff that we used to have in software engineering that went away when we kind of implemented this apocryphal version of Agile, which is like code, test, do everything's got to be right now. Like if your hands aren't on your keyboard, you're wasting your time mentality.
Right.
That it's certainly not the fault of the Agile Manifesto or of Agile kind of leaders in the Agile community, but it's still what happened in a lot of organizations, right? So what we're doing is we're saying no, 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 no. People need to get ready to do things. In fact, I just had this incident happen with me where it's like I'm building something for someone, um, but there's kind of cost trade-offs to how it's going to be hosted. And I really need to know which of the two ways to host it that I recommend that they want before I bother building that hosting layer. Because if I just pick one and get and start working, then there's a 50% chance that I'll speed us up a few days and a 50% chance that I'll just waste budget building something that at best I throw away and replace with something else. So we need to set ourselves up for success and not just set ourselves up from success in terms of closing work items, but in terms of making progress towards business goals. And traditional, quote unquote, traditional agile environments don't do that. There's just this intense pressure to close work items, to check changes into code bases, to get PRs merged and reviewed and all this stuff with not enough time and emphasis spent on making sure that any of it is right or, or going to advance your goals. And I don't want to get too like deep into the details of how we address that. That's really more of a like if someone wants a deep dive on that, they would probably pick up Ready instead of this book. But this is at the executive level, right? This is all executive briefs. The structure of this is just like one pager, one pager, one pager, one pager. So
Yeah, I should have actually brought that up myself. One of the interesting things about the book is that structure, that it's kind of these maybe sometimes 1.25 or whatever, but these sort of brief things that you can go into. I'm having a certain kind of problem, flick through this book and find,
right.
that looks relevant to me. Okay, now I can go into a meeting armed with something. or decision, armed with something that I maybe didn't have before, and a way
Yeah.
of talking about it.
It
Which
was a
and
very intentional decision because,
Mhm.
well, as you said, this applies to anybody. My target audience is leaders in mid to large organizations, in charge of an engineering department, maybe a product, someone in charge of a product department who's got a close relationship with engineering. And I've noticed that there's these two forces around what they read, right? One is they don't need all of the narrative and support and detail that you have in a traditional book
Right.
like Ready, right? Ready is like, here's this thing. I'm going to take someone who's really close to this implementation pattern, and I'm going to gently explain to them why that's what's hurting them, right? And move them to this other one. It's a deep persuasion technique, and we don't need that with leaders because they're not that close to like a leader's like, yeah, maybe TDD is good. TDD was good when I was the developer or whatever, but maybe it's not good anymore. That they're not like invested in that stuff. And then the other thing is they don't have a lot of time, like to read a 300-page book is this huge commitment. So we structured this more as a library, and we intend to treat it that way. Like a month down the line, if we come up with another case or whatever,
Hmm.
we're going to add another brief, and we're going to send out a little note to all the people. Oh, there's this new brief for this new problem. Maybe that's there. So the idea here is you read the 5 introductory briefs. That's 5 pages or less, and then you just go through the the like you said, you go through the table of contents, find your problem, read your brief, and leave the rest for when you have another problem and you want to come back to it.
That's a really great description. I've never heard of that angle on a book exactly quite like that before, and that's really well described and really good. Um, there's a lot more in this book. I was going to ask you about AI, but I'm going to leave that to people to find out when they buy the book and go to the brief on AI. Uh, as Max mentioned just before we sort of close out here, we've spoken before a couple of times on launch videos and also on the podcast. So if you're interested in hearing more about the enlightenment from Max, check out our podcast interview. I've also interviewed Luniel as well on the podcast. And if you're interested in Ready, the book that Max and Luniel wrote, there's also a course that goes along with it that has about 3 hours of interviews of me talking to Luniel about these issues that Max was some of the issues Max was talking about around requirements, maturation flow, and things like that, very in depth. So if you're interested in that, I highly recommend that and all of Max's other books on Leanpub as well. So the book is Fixing Software Delivery: An Engineering Leader's Field Guide. Thank you very much, Max, for taking the time to talk to me and to all of us today about this, and thanks for the great book.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.